Hey, it's Don, the Auction Professor. Today we're going to talk about a topic that I actually like and I enjoy, and things that I actually do and make myself. It's miniatures. Little tiny renditions of larger objects, either for dollhouses, for collectors, for train sets. But across the board, miniature items do sell very high. I've shown you miniature books that sell very high before in another BOLO video. But just in general, we're going to show you some very interesting things. This category, anybody can make some good money on. Anybody can sell things in this category. It's easy to find. And even if you can't find it, there's artistic people that like this kind of thing that actually create their own artistic-wise. I'm one of them. We do our own miniatures. I've shown you some in other videos. You can make them across the board. This is something that anybody can do. This category is really opened. It's a big BOLO across the board. We sell almost anything that's a miniature version of something large, whether it even be a salesman sample or something, but miniatures in general sell very well. We're going to go over the screen and I'm going to show you some right now. Okay, so now this is miniatures. I like this category, so I'm probably going to do several more videos in the future. I've actually recreated and done my own miniatures. Even since I was a kid, I was always fascinated with models. ILM, Sam Winston. ILM, Industrial Light and Magic, it was created by George Lucas. They do the miniatures, the models. Sam Winston is a special effects guy who did like Terminator and things like that. I just always have loved the models. So for me, this category is one of my favorites, you know. I love the historical, the antique, and such forth, obviously, and, you know, collectible cards and things. But this area I've always liked. Again, as I said, because I have actually done stuff like this. You put enough time and effort in, and these items are, you know, worth some money. So people have spent time to create each one of these. And in a general aspect, they create them to look like the real deal. Whether that means they use actual metal, if it's a metal piece like this, or whatever the case may be. Let's look down and see what this is made out of. This one's from the 30s. It's metal with white enamel. This is a professional job. Let me see here. And this one's made out of metal. It looks like this is a new one that was created by what I see down there. I know it says used. I am not sure because it says professional aged on this. So some of these are obviously created right now, made to look old, and that's usually what I see. On like this one here, I would say it was probably made to look old. Somebody cast the metal pieces themselves. Not hard to do if you're, you know, artistic and get into this kind of stuff. It's even easy to enamel pieces like this. But miniatures we'll be talking about today are items that were made to look identical to the life-sized item, but only in like 1/12 scale or 1/6 scale or something like that. 1/12 means 1 foot equals 1 inch. That's what 1/12 scale is. Let's move on here. Now here's another piece. Now the difference between these and just like the kind of miniatures you see at an auction or something, you might run into one of these at an auction, but the difference here is this. This is actually dovetailed. So this is created and constructed just like you would a real piece of furniture. That is the key. Now this one goes way above, and it includes vintage, you know, chinaware and things like that. For the most part, these tiny china pieces like this were probably hand painted and hand decorated. Even like the goblets there, those were probably handmade as well too. When you look at the price, you can kind of get the gist on it. $1,000. So this is something that someone may have taken, you know, a couple days to do the furniture piece itself, and it may be able to be done in a day. I'm not really sure on time. I know what it would take me, you know, especially first time out. It would take some time. You know, the legs could have been bought separately, it's hard to say, or this person could have tooled out everything you see here, like the brass, you know, pulls and things like that. Now, those you can buy. They probably bought all the glass and decorations sitting on here, because, again, there are factories that make this overseas, so the china may sound expensive because it's handmade, but that doesn't mean it's expensive. The furniture itself is what sold this, because it's so realistic to the real deal. So people take photographs of these miniatures and they'll make them look like life-size versions and things like that, even like buildings and things like that. Let me see here. This is Kramer. Now this is small. I think he's like 6 inches tall. Maybe it shows it shows a hand in there. So you can kind of get the gist of it. Now it looks to me like the person probably stitched the clothing themselves, real thin fabric. But it looks to me like it's only hands and the head, and the rest is all bendable. Let me see if you can see a good example of what I'm talking about. Like here, you can see how it's sunken in where his elbow is. I really think this is just a wire frame under here. Doesn't matter. It's still sold $975. I'm not promoting any characters in this, so I'm just showing you characters that people would recognize. This one's by the same person, 6 inches tall. You can see the gist on it. Again, they probably made the suit themselves and the clothing, button-wise, and the whole works. They created the cigar and literally from scratch. This is probably something that could have been done in Sculpey. I'm not really sure if it was or not. It might not even say. A lot of times they do not say. No, it does not say. But this person has many others, so it's not something, odd to see stuff like this. There's many artists who do these. Even for toy versions, they'll do like Mego versions of somebody who never was a Mego character. But $925 on that one. Here's another example. This one's made to look like a leather sofa, a full-size leather sofa from like a luxury place or something like that. Now, this is probably a real leather sofa. They've, taken their time. This one's got wood on the bottom, so it's rather interesting. Signed, not super old or anything like that, but, there was a big fad of these at one time. Anything like this sells. This person has its own little studio miniature model that he uses to take these. So this is probably a high-end collector of just miniatures. That rug was probably hand-stitched as well, because that's what people do. Whenever you're looking for miniatures like this, you want something to look realistic, like a real thing. Even like these lamps. Now, there's little bulbs you can actually get where you could wire these lamps to even work, believe it or not. The tables are just as ornate. Even little books. I've made books, little tiny miniature books, leather ones, that look like the real deal. And they sold. They sold right off the bat. I've made pieces of furniture. I've made model buildings for HO scale. They've all sold. I've made, hundreds of dollars on some of my miniatures. So this is, as I said, one area that I do actually like. You've just got to have the patience with something like this and to try and recreate it, to match the actual item. There's many things you can make, but most things do sell to some extent. These obviously sell for a lot more because there's a lot more involved into making miniature pieces of wood like this. In many cases, some of these are actually made out of the real wood, so the real type of wood like cherry or walnut or maple or anything like that. And this one looks like it's very well done, actually. Let me see. Yeah, everything's functional as well too. So this is a very nice piece. Again, there's people who just cater to dollhouse collectors of miniatures and things like that. And they'll have hundreds of them. There's some that have 1,000 or more pieces like this up. So they're high end because most of the pieces, if you have 1,000 of something that goes for $1,000, it's a lot of money invested. Let's just say that. Now, John Hodgson, well-known, does a lot of, or did, I think he's actually passed at this point. They're all signed. They're all one-of-a-kinds, basically hand-created. Again, he may buy the legs. These may be kits to some extent, but I really don't think so. I think these were all individually made by this guy. He would have hand-carved the wood and, got the patterns in there and made them look as realistic. And again, people will take big, thick pieces of actual wood and whittle them down or cut them down, miniature bandsaws and things like that. So this stuff is usually real furniture made by hand. I don't remember the whole story on this guy, but I've looked him up before in the past. I know if you look up his name on a Google search or something, you're going to find tons of information on him. But anyway, $1,200 for that set of 4 chairs. Now, this isn't even as nice as some of the pieces I've seen. Nothing wrong with it, not to cut on or anything, as it's pretty neat. But it's just not quite... I don't know if it's just me or the proportions aren't quite right. Just something about it. It's still sold well, so, I shouldn't complain. It's a personal thing, I guess, for me. I'm not so on getting everything to look so much like the original life-size item. That's a big thrill for me to be able to succeed in fooling somebody from a photo, not being able to tell if it's a miniature or real. That's the key to this. If it looks like it's a real item, when you take a photo and you can't tell if it's miniature or not, those are the ones that you want. That's the key from everything I see. Let's move on. 810 on that one. Again, hand-stitched rug. I believe this is, silk. And these do show up. And some people even use like the tobacco silks out of there for little rugs, but this is the real deal. Somebody hand stitched this little tiny rug. Lord knows how long that took, but $760. I'd imagine you could do this in a day or two. Personally, maybe not. Maybe it's more involved than I would think, but I would personally think a day or two. So if you could do a couple of these a week, you could be making $6,000-7,000 a month on just these kind of rugs, little tiny ones, and only have to do a handful of them, honestly. But, it just depends on your skill level. If you're not artistic in drawing, this may be something you can do. You're a woodworker and you just can't sell enough, or you want to figure out some way to sell, or make some money at home. Miniature wood furniture or leather chairs or whatever you want to make. Dogs. People do dogs. No, I've known about these for probably a decade, even before that you'd see them on eBay, because I've, again, talked about it, and I go to some of these shows occasionally. It's one of the kind of things I do go to, and it kind of relates to going to Dragon Con and doing sci-fi and stuff. I love miniatures. You can see the size of it. It's tiny. Usually these are bendable, hand sculpted, so it might be a clay base and then it was furred over. Sometimes they use llama fur and things like that. Sometimes it's fake fur. I've used llama fur, mostly alpaca, and things along that line. So, and he doesn't say what it's made out of, and it doesn't really matter. They're buying it for the looks. This one went for $735. Miniature skates. Now these are the real deal. This person made them with miniature nuts, bolts. Looks like he probably cut the wheels out himself. All out of metal. This takes some precision work. He's made the straps, and it looks like they're actually leather. He's even hammered in logo down there and made the key to change the tires, basically, the wheels. That's what the key's for, if you're unfamiliar. But anyway, it's rather interesting. $725. You can see how small that set is. I would have loved to be able to do something like that. That's pretty unique. You have to have some skills with metal working to do something like that, though. Now, here's another thing. Now, something like this, again, this person could have done these all in one day or less. $720, so you do 5 different sets of miniatures a week. If you can do something like this in a day and then be able to sell them, you're going to make some money. I mean, it's just, they're real. They're wrought iron handles that someone actually made. So this is a real deal. They've actually put a rivet in there and the whole works. So they made them like the real deal. Again, that is the key. If you have the talent to make something like this, you can make a lot of money. And I'm sure it's possible for people to do this stuff at home because, somebody did this. It's supposed to look, old, historic, ancient. So again, $720 on this. And again, this could just be a day's worth of work. This could be a few hours worth of work for somebody. I'm not sure how long it might take to do something like this. I've never done the metal objects like this, but anything you can do in real life, you will find a miniature of. Anything. I don't care what it is. And they all sell too. Now this is, I believe this person, Jim Irish, has passed, if I'm not mistaken. This one's from the 60s or 70s. Maybe it says down here. No, it doesn't say. But these are actual crystal glass pieces, a decanter set. Opens up. I believe you can actually put liquid in these. Somebody hand-etched the design in there, if I'm not mistaken. And then this gentleman has, miniature furniture just to market this even. So this is someone who's really into it. Jay Brown, I've seen that name many times. Another miniature dog chewing a bone. I mean, this one's pretty realistic in my book. I mean, the fur looks good. Everything about it looks good. It's small, probably posable too. Yeah, you can see the hand, how small this is. $637. Now, some of these I've seen go for, $1,500, even $2,500. I've seen little miniature people and baby dolls and, like little babies, for $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. These aren't marked up prices. Those are actual prices they sell for. I've watched this category for at least a decade, and that's legit pricing on these. Now, this one isn't as good as some of the cats. It's pretty darn good, though, so don't get me wrong. Probably real fur, rabbit fur or something. That's what we've used also in the past besides alpaca. I've got a Santa Claus. I've done some miniatures. I've done some figures. If you're interested, you can go back through some of my videos and you'll see some of the ones we've done. Every one I've ever done has sold, and I'm, nobody in the field of miniatures, so, it's very possible to do this kind of stuff. Again, people will throw together setups and things, and you can do even a little diorama or just sell the figure, but $611 for this one. Now, there are vintage miniatures. Now, these are actual Stife bears, 1910, 20s. Rather nice, $599, basically $600. No ID, so cute. Meaning that the bear is the tag on the ear is probably gone. But anyway, $600. So again, there's miniatures. This is 1830s or 40s. This is for a dollhouse. This is some well-to-do person back then who could have afforded this. This is $600, basically $595 for this little doll. It's a pegged wood doll. You're going to find this kind of stuff. You can recreate these and still make good money at it. So, miniatures are a huge, huge market. This piece here, I've seen one almost identical to this. I don't know if it's the same person or not, but it's actually all metal. The handle turns. It's signed on the bottom. It's been used. They take one item and they alter it and add to it. That's all real brass on there. This is something that somebody took some time to recreate. Logos, everything else. So you have to have some machining abilities or some stamping abilities. Some of this now they do and they'll print it off the PC, like the logos and stuff. Record could have been cast in resin, and the rest could be metal that somebody did from little pipes and soldered at their house. So again, these things do sell. Almost $600, $589.79. Now, oil painting. Now, this is another field. People will recreate oil paintings. They'll buy or make the frames. This one looks like they made it. Now, this is a little odder than some. I usually don't see tape at all on the back of anything like this. Now, somebody's got tape on it. I'm not sure if that's how it was originally made, but I would honestly doubt it. Again, because I just don't see tape on things. That's just my personal experience. But $587, people will put those in their dollhouses. They'll deck them all out. They'll make it look like the real thing, or they'll be making dioramas. Now here's another piece. Now, when you see stuff like this, these are usually made out of actual silver. Now, I don't know on this one here, but you will see silver. I mean, literally, they've hand chased and done that, and then sometimes it's even touch marked. Only 20 of these were made. Yeah, very limited. Yeah, sterling silver. So this is actual sterling silver, very intricately made and cast. I've cast sterling with my son, so I know how hard it is to get those little fine details out. So anyway, that's a rare, very nice piece. I'm surprised it didn't go for more. $578.97. Another dog. This one's cute. Not as realistic as some, but it's pretty darn close. $521. The prices go along with how good they look. So, the higher the price, the more detail and interesting they are. Now, this guy took off on Halloween. Probably made the entire thing from scratch. Pumpkins you can make. I would have cast that. So it's not, something you wouldn't expect to see. It's rather interesting, honestly, in my book. It looks like the whole thing is included, or maybe just the dog. The cat's not included, so you're just getting this right here. $1,624. Now, if you did a Christmas one, you could mark it up more than you would on just a standard dog. If you did a Halloween one before Halloween, the same thing. The people who collect the dollhouse miniatures deck their dollhouses or their miniatures out for the holidays. They'll have miniature Christmas trees for Christmas, and Thanksgiving tables for Thanksgiving, and Halloween for Halloween, and things like that. Believe it or not, that's a real thing. So, that's why these go up. So this might have not sold as high if the pumpkin, the jack-o'-lanterns weren't there. It was just a dog. Because, again, you're paying for the whole atmosphere of this, a Halloween piece. This one's 1584. This is a very nice, made to look again realistic. This one, I think, yeah, this one's done pretty much like the real deal. Now, you glue some of this. You don't stitch it in like you would the real, just because it's impossible to do on some of these. But, you know, this is just a real nice piece. It doesn't take a ton of skill to be able to do this. I shouldn't say it's a skill you can learn, I guess you could say. I'm fairly good on stuff like this. I have a professional sewing machine because we do costumes and things. But again, this is something that can be done. You know, once you know the basics on upholstering a real piece of furniture, you'll get the gist on how to do the small ones. And you can just get a book from the library or a video online. There's tons of them here on YouTube, but almost $1,600 for that. So, you know, that might be something that took a person a day to do. And I'm not exaggerating. Now, this is pewter, gilt pewter, if I'm not mistaken. Let me go down and make sure. Hodgson, again, this was another one. Yeah, this is cast pewter that's been 22 karat, real gold plated, and that's actually a piece of marble. Now, you know, people's thinking, you know, who's going to find that? These are rare. Who's going to be able to find that? These aren't as rare. They're rare, I should say, yes, but stuff like this does occasionally show up because most people wouldn't realize it's real, that worth that much either. You might see it in a dollhouse lot. No one would know it was that type. I found some expensive 500 to 1,000 plus pieces of miniature furniture from dollhouses that were just, you know, people thought were just junk, and I got them for almost nothing. $1,624. Now this is sterling as well. This is something done by a professional silversmith. Very unique, very well done. They had to do a mold of this and cast it in the whole works. They've got touch marks on the bottom even. $1,325. I'm surprised it did not go for more. You'll see spoons. These glasses were well made to look like the real deal. They're all sterling. $1,325. I mean, you just can't go wrong when you're finding stuff like this. And I've had little miniature pieces of sterling and china plates and things. I've got vintage miniature china sets up right now. They always sell. They're not super quick movers if they're not something like this, but they do sell, and you do make a profit, a good profit. Another cat, $1,000. Now this one's a little better than most. We had a cat that looked like that, honestly. Eyes are a little off in my opinion, but again, it's a very nice piece either way. They hand laid the fur on it, and then it was cut to match it. Probably dyed themselves. That's usually what people do on these. It might not say. I'm not going to read this huge long thing, but yeah, it's usually polymer clay. Applied coat of soft natural fibers. Now this is just natural fibers, but I used to use, you know, as I said, alpaca or rabbit for most of what we did. Beards and stuff were usually almost always alpaca. Now this is a newer item, and these are sold to like designers and things like that, or collectors of the era. This is miniature, made to look like the real Eames era furniture, and it really looks good. Now these come in a box. This is a new piece. It's a specific, you know, factory that does this. So anyway, $950 basically on that. And I just have one more piece here. Again, I love this area. It's a big, neat area for me anyway. This is just for one of these chairs. $1,105. It's well done. It looks like they've even done, yeah, they've even taken little tiny tacks, which you can buy those tacks, miniature tacks, at a dollhouse supply company. I've got some here. You can even use little tiny nails and brads and things like that if you want. This one was probably literally done from scratch. And if you look at it, if you know something, that once you've got the feet down and the wood part itself, the rest of it should be fairly easy to do because you're just laying a structure over it. You might have to thin out the leather. That's the key on this. What they'll do is they'll thin out the leather. They'll sand it down so it's really thin, so it's not bulky. And then it's pretty much just stitching it together. The back part there, the two slats, or it could have even been just glued and, you know, made from there. And this is something that a lot of people could do with just a little bit of practice. So, you know, don't think it's crazy. Don't think this is, you know, insane money for something that's just not worth it. You know, there's hundreds of people that do this. There's people that are my age. There's people that, you know, are just like you and me that do this right now and make money. There's people who create their own dolls. There's people who make just new doll heads. There's people who make like Mego style heads action figures. There's people who make their own action figures. All of this stuff is possible these days because of the internet. So again, this is just something that I've always loved. I love this area. I'm going to return to this, I'm telling you right now, just because I've always been fascinated with this. Whenever they have the miniature tour, the museum displays for miniatures, I always go down to the Art Museum, or we'll drive to Detroit or one of the other museums here, and I always look at them. We go to the Henry Ford, we've been to the Smithsonian, many times to the Smithsonian. We've went to many parts of the National Art Gallery, all the galleries you can in D.C. and the whole works. Wherever we go, we usually go to the museums as well, too, with the family. I love miniatures, but that's what I have for you today.
Well, there you go. There's some more items you can look for. Again, some of these can be made at your house. You don't need to go out and hunt some of these. And as you saw, some of the miniature figures and things sell for a lot of money. It just depends on how much time you put into them, what type of material it is, how much research you do into the item so that you know it's worth actually creating in the first place. So again, hopefully that gave you some ideas and some thoughts. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button down below. You can also hit the bell icon to be notified when we post new content or go live. Subscribe and tell a friend.